Hello, everybody. My name is Colton with Narrative Inc., and I'm here with another author interview. And I would like to turn it over to a fantastic author that I met at a convention. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sweet. My name is Mike Thayer. I'm the author of middle grade kind of epic fantasy and magical realism. So I self-published a series called The Epic Adventures of the Techno Wizard about a boy who gets transported to a magical world, but still maintains his cell phone signal back to our world. So he gets to live stream and all the battles and the monsters and the magic, and gets to look up answers on his phone, his quote unquote oracle. They think he's a wizard because he has all this technology they don't understand. So The Epic Adventures of the Techno Wizard. And then in between those books, I kind of wrote some other books, and those got picked up. So I have two books through Macmillan. One is called The Double Life of Danny Day, about a boy who lives every day twice. There you go. And then the other one is called The Talent Thief. That came out about a year ago. It's about a girl who gets the ability to steal people's talents for a day. So those are my two magical realisms, which are the nationally published ones. My epic fantasy are my self-published ones. And then I'm working on a story right now. It's kind of walks the line between the two. And I will shop that around probably third quarter of this year, try to get picked up. So, and that's gonna be a good one. So yeah, that's kind of the books I write. I'm an engineer by degree. So I'm literally in the parking lot of a refinery right now. Right now. So in the background is a bunch of our tanks. And that's what I kind of still do for my day job. But I've departed from doing a lot of crunching numbers, engineering style stuff, even though I'm a chemical engineer. I do a lot now in my new role, leadership development, and build leadership development and sustainment programs. There's actually a huge crossover between my school visit presentations and the presentations that I do for leadership at work. And that crossover is getting more and more and more pronounced as we go forward. So I just found that that's what my passion is. I like presenting, I like speaking, I like connecting with folks. That's what I'm good at. My dad was a creative writing professor, so that's where the family connection was. So he taught at BYU for longer than any professor in BYU's history. So he taught for 54 years as a creative writing professor at BYU. And he has taught everyone from Orson Scott Card to Brandon Sanderson to Brandon Mull. And the funny thing is, my dad hated fantasy. So he was not a fan. But he was awesome. He was extremely good at what he did. He believed way more in hard work than he did natural talent, and was kind of known as a draft horse. He would do like 20 drafts of a short story to get it right. Jeez. And so did not think very highly of people who were quote unquote naturally skilled or gifted. And he was much, much older than me. He got married later in life. So I had a dad who was kind of the age of everyone's grandpa. And so he kind of instilled in me the work ethic. Right. And then it wasn't until I was trying to get my first Techno Wizard book out right before he passed away in 2017, and I didn't quite get it out in time. So my life as an author never really overlapped with my dad, which is unfortunate, but it's a way that I've connected with him kind of after the fact. And interesting that I kind of caught that bug. It wasn't, my dad didn't force it on me. My youngest daughter has now caught the bug. So she writes, she's 12, and she will surpass me quickly. But yeah, so that's what I do. I love doing school visits. It's one of my favorite things that I do. I wrote in the evenings for 7, 8, 9 years, wrote this big old huge 200,000 word fantasy epic for adults. It was garbage. Didn't know what I was doing, but I wrote like 5 drafts of it and got it edited and all this stuff. And then when we moved to Montana I was in Texas and then Australia, and then we've been in Montana since 2016. I shifted gears to middle grade. So I wanted to write middle grade books. Okay, what I say is I want to write books for kids while my kids were still kids. Right. And I have readily, easy access to kids and what they say and the things they talk about and the conversations they have with their friends. And so that's been helpful. And then I just love I love connecting with kids. I love my kids' friends when they come in my house and get to talk to them and joke around with them and mess around with them and tease them. And reaching out and doing the school visits have been one of the coolest things. And so, yeah, I've kind of been on the grind kind of since then. First book got published in 2018. I took a year off of work just to have fun, and I did 3 novels in that year. And that's when I really cemented myself with school visits, and then came back to work to do leadership stuff. But yeah, I've kind of been on the grind since 2018, since we moved back and I published that first that first Techno-Wizard book. So now it's, depending on how work's going, I'm trying to come out with like a book a year. I'm not quite at that pace anymore, but I'm always working on something. Always got something toiling around in the background. So that is more or less me.
Dang, that's amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the most impressive things to me that from just meeting you at the convention and everything was the school visits, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing posts about you saying that you went even before you were published. What
Yeah.
was
Which was pretty crazy.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
What was that process like? What pushed you to do that? Because I feel like me, I'm like, oh, I have to be able to present something
Yeah.
tangible, right? So
And
that,
this was, there's the fake it till you make it.
right,
I started off with the stakes were really low. I wouldn't be like, I'm going to be your keynote speaker and I haven't published anything. I'd tell you probably to pump your brakes there. But
yeah,
we were in small town Australia and, 15,000 people in Sale, Australia. And someone caught wind that I was writing in the evenings.
Mhm.
And so she's like, oh, come in and talk to the class. And was like,
Yeah.
I think my daughter was like in third grade.
Mm.
So I came and just kind of put a little presentation together about, creativity,
Okay.
more or less. So this is about creativity. Hey, I work at the gas plant here. We're building a gas plant. We're expats, but I also write in the evening. So it was more like, it wasn't like, hey, this is how you become a published author, because I wasn't.
Right.
It was more, this is how you nurture your creativity. You can have the left and the right halves of your brain both working in harmony. You can be a writer and an engineer. It is interesting, though, to go back and look at the very first drafts of my school visit presentation and see what little tidbits have actually continued to make it all the way through the various drafts. So there are stuff from my very first school visit presentation that have lasted, that have stood the test of time. But then you start for free. You start at a class. And my whatever you do, whether you're rolling out a leadership program or whether you're trying to contact schools, almost any initiative, whether personal or professional, I am a fan of starting where the ground is softest.
Yeah.
So if you've got a kid, if you've got a nephew, if you've got a friend who's a teacher, do that. Reach out and say, hey, give me some place that's super low stakes. I'm not going to charge anything. I want reps. I want to see how this kids respond.
Right.
It's a bit like preparing like a stand-up routine sometimes, because you need to see what works and what doesn't, and you want to work out the kinks before you have a whole arena full of people. And so I was able to work out like, hey, this joke works, this one doesn't, I got to try something else. And I am a big fan of iteration beats inspiration. Mm-hmm. So you can sit there all day and try to think of the right thing and think of the perfect presentation, and then you're going to go do it, and you're going to realize, well, 70% of that did not land, and I've got to come up with something better. And just realize that, just like anything, failure is part of success. And so, you just got to get reps. So I just started there. I started real easy and simple. I did like one or two in Australia, and then I came here, and a lady at my work knew I was working on Techno-Wizard. She's like, you got to come to talk to my son's class. And I was like, I'm not even published yet. She's like, I don't care. I was like, okay, as long as you know what the deal is here.
Right.
Writers do like to talk about doing stuff more than they like to actually do stuff. And so I get the temptation like, I want to start doing school visits. I would not recommend it.
Right.
Before you come out with something or have something to say. But that's not to say you can't dip your toe in. I would just be cautious about what you're offering and what you say you're offering.
Yeah.
And so and they know what the deal is.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started there, and then quickly after that, I came out with Techno-Wizard. So I did a few before I was published, but not many.
Okay.
And then those were free. And then again, once I published, it was my kids' class. Mm-hmm. And then my kids' class, I said, hey, I know we're doing Mrs. Williamson's class. Do you mind inviting the rest of the grade? And then instead of just one class, it was, instead of 20 people, it was 60. And then the other grades heard about it. Either I did it, and then they're like, oh yeah, we want you to come back. Or another school heard about it, or the librarian started talking, and then it just like slowly builds. And then eventually you get a librarian going, why are you doing these for free? Yeah. I was like, I don't know. It's like, you need to charge for these. Oh, okay. And then I started charging, $100, and now I charge $300 or whatever, And then again, I said before when we started recording that I'm willing to waive fees. Usually what I say to people is, I'll waive the fee. I'm worth the money. But if school funds is a bottleneck, it's more important that I get in front of the kids than it is that I get paid. Most of the time they go, oh, no, funds are fine. Sometimes they're like, yeah, we don't have money. I'm like, okay, I'll still show up. So, but I just love doing it. It's It's a great way to stay sharp. It's a great way to see what kids react to. And then your public speaking, again, your ability to speak about your books and about those topics in fun and clever ways, you will use all the time because you're either going to be at a conference or a convention. I just went out and did teen author boot camp in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like that opportunity. It's very interesting when you trace back opportunities and how they happen. That opportunity, take a little bit of a side here, came because I met J. Scott Savage, and man, this is like, I just keep going down this rabbit hole, but I met J. Scott Savage, and he liked me and invited me to participate in this huge multi-author like school visit 2-week long deal. So I actually took like unpaid leave from work because I didn't have a vacation for it.
Right.
And I did 2 solid weeks in Utah school visits, and I leaned in hard. And what I mean by that is he had this big this big like book launch party thing that was essentially a play because it was like a Wonderland Diaries book series.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, all right, whatever you need. I don't want a small part. I want a big part in this. Whatever you need. He's like, all right, you're gonna be the Mad Hatter. So I was like, all right. So I memorized like 1,000 words of dialogue for this play. It was like 40 minutes long. It was a little too ambitious. In the end, we decided. But I leaned into this thing hard. And I impressed this lady who was also one of the other authors there. She thought I was fun. And she runs Teen Author Boot Camp. And then like you get the invite to go there. And it's just like, and the reason why I was on J. Scott Savage's radar is because I came down to Utah to do a Renaissance fair and to pitch my books. And I impressed the lady there. And the lady there was one of the ladies that ran LTUE. And she liked me. And so she put me with a book reading with J. Scott Savage. And I did a book reading with J. Scott Savage. And I leaned in hard to that. And then Jeff liked me. And it's just like, you have to be open and say yes to stuff and then lean into things. And it is crazy to trace back to go, I was able to stand on stage in front of 1,000 kids at Teen Author Boot Camp because I decided to load up my car and drive 9 hours south to Utah to do a Renaissance fair 3 years before.
Dang.
And it's part of because you'll do these things, man. You'll load your car up and you'll drive these things and you'll be like, well, that was dumb. I wasted a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of my pride to do something was stupid. Yeah. But if you like doing it and you lean in hard, it is crazy. The ripple effects and the dominoes that start falling. Yeah. So you got to like doing it. You got to lean in. And eventually people will start recognizing what you have to offer. And there's no guarantee. It will be impossible to predict where it goes.
Yeah, of course.
Impossible.
I mean, you went from a Renaissance fair to in front of these thousands of kids. Like, that's insane. That's so cool. But really, it all started back in Australia, doing those 1 or 2 visits.
Yes.
You just getting going with it. And that is so
just
cool.
Being willing to dip your toe in.
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially what Christopher Paolini, how he got started and what launched his career. Not saying, I mean, hopefully you're the next Christopher Paolini. That'd be amazing. But, you know,
so you have no idea how you stepped into this next connection. Guess who I was talking to at Teen Author Boot Camp?
Christopher Paolini.
Yeah. So what I found out was Christopher Paolini lives 90 minutes from me. So he gets up and tells a story about him living in Paradise Valley near Livingston, Montana. So I go up to him because he's one of the authors there. And I was like, do you still live in Livingston? He's like, oh, yeah, we're in that area. I was like, I live in Billings. He's like, what? He's like, I didn't know there was any authors up in Montana. I was like, I didn't know the same thing either. Like the first high school he ever did when he kicked off this whole thing was Livingston High School. So he's like, dude, give me your contact information. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah.
So Christopher Paolini, we exchanged info again because I went to either I started, I presented a class in Australia or I went to this Renaissance fair or whatever. But it's amazing the connections you make.
Yeah. So you're saying that networking and collaborating with people is very helpful for your career as a indie or new author.
There is no substitute. Yeah. You have to do it.
Right.
Now, can you start? I mean, I guess if you can find a path to success that doesn't require it, then more power to you.
Oh yeah. For sure.
But you have a better chance of splitting the atom in your garage than you do of pulling that one off. So, and there are some authors that are very introverted and don't like reaching out to people and like being cloistered away. That's fine. That is not who I am. So I am much more, this is the thing, you'll see this at LTUE and at other conventions. The whole place is probably 70%, 80% introverted people, but they're talking, they're getting along. Once you find your people, then everyone kind of mixes and mingles, and
Yeah.
it's, and so just being willing to offer something. And then also, I mean, one of the reasons I do this because I like you,
Yeah.
and I think we have good conversations,
Mhm.
and you're an earnest person, and I'm very ready and willing to help people. But it's also because I was helped.
Right.
Jeff Savage has helped me. Brandon Mole has helped me. Sanderson, my dad. There's plenty of people around that have, Dan Wells, that have given me an opportunity that I didn't have before. Jen Jenkins. So yeah, that's how you pay it forward, man. And if you don't want to be part of this reciprocal community, you can still succeed, but you are leaving a lot on the table. And I'm not even saying just from a professional advancement standpoint, but just from a satisfaction standpoint and a fulfillment standpoint. Like, I can't tell you how awesome it is. And again, I enjoy talking with people from all parts of the spectrum, starting out, teens, whatever. But at this last LTUE, some of the regulars that I normally talk to weren't there. And at the very end of the banquet, I saw someone who had met at Jeff Savage's sort of author play thing that we did. She played the Cheshire Cat,
Nice.
Celesta Remington. And I was, hey, I didn't get a chance to talk to her. So I caught her as she was leaving. So this is like the whole conference is done. And I got a chance to talk to her. And she's kind of at my level, a little bit beyond.
Mhm.
So she's kind of published a couple of books nationally. She had something go to auction, which is super cool.
Wow.
So she's gotten a bigger book deal than me, not like astronomically bigger, but we're about the same level. We deal with the same types of issues.
Yeah.
It was so nice to talk to her because I was like, okay, I talk to people. This is how you come up. Then I'll talk to someone who's like Christopher Paolini, who's miles beyond me. But then eventually you find people who are like, oh, you're dealing with exactly the same thing that I'm dealing with. It's so nice because she just understood everything I was going through. But again, I enjoy all the different types of the conversations. They fulfill me in different ways. And so that was one of the things when I got back from Australia, I said, I need to start building my author community because I don't have one.
Right.
And so I'm like, I'm going to go to LTUE every year. And for the first couple of years, I was doing exactly what you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I attended every session. I took a huge thing of notes. And then after a couple of years, I started getting on the other side of the table. And then it's kind of taken off from there.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. And yeah, I'm actually extremely introverted. I would much rather stay home, do my own thing, be in front of my computer, do my own thing. But I love being at conventions, whether it's Dragonsteel, LTUE, the small board game conventions that I go to here in Idaho. But it's so fun to be around those people that love what you're doing and what you do, because they understand. And like you were just saying, yeah, they're on the same level or they've been there. And yeah, it's so fun. And it's so
finding your people is big.
It's so important because you're going to make connections that you never expected. Like, that's so cool that your dad was a professor and he taught all of these amazing fantasy authors, which is kind of ironic. But that's so cool that you've had.
And I never knew, until it was there was some big spread on Sanderson. This was 10 years ago,
right?
Maybe even more in the newspaper. And my dad got interviewed with it.
Oh wow!
And I was like, Sanderson? He's like, oh my gosh, yeah, stuff bores me to tears. And I was like, what? And then I just started Googling other people, and I was found out, Brandon Mole's big success with Fablehaven, and I interviewed my dad, and I was like, Dad, what is going on? He's like, I don't know. My dad is very hard to impress, or was very hard to impress. And actually that connection, so I ran into Brandon Mole at LTUE.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to be that guy that stops him and bugs him. And my sister was with me. She's like, Mike, go talk to Brandon Mole. I was like, okay. So I just come out with one Techno Wizard book, I think.
Yeah.
And I went out and talked to him, stopped him, said, hey, I'm Doug Thayer's son. He's like, oh my gosh, yeah, Doug. So we started talking, and I had just been to New Zealand and found all the Lord of the Rings locations and whatever. And he's like, oh, I'm going to go to New Zealand. I was like, well, I'm your guy, man. If you want to see the Lord of the Rings film locations, I have them down to the GPS markers. And we stayed in touch. And then I was like, hey, I did a podcast on my year off. And I started reaching out so I got nominated for a Whitney Award for the first Techno Wizard.
Nice.
So it was a very easy way for me to reach out to the other Whitney Award finalists. So I said, hey, can I interview Jen Nielsen, who's huge New York Times bestseller, and she dominates any award show she gets. So when I showed up to the award show, it was a watch Jen Nielsen get award ceremony, which is fine. She's great. And it's inevitable.
Yeah.
So I could reach out, and then I reached out to Brandon Mole, and I was like, hey man, can I interview you?
Mhm.
And he goes, yeah. So like, sweet. He's like, how about you come to my house? I was like, okay. So he was by himself, and I interviewed him from like 8 to like midnight.
Wow.
And then afterwards I was getting in my car, and I was like, why'd you accept the interview? He's like, I don't know. I always just kind of liked you. I was like, sweet. And then he got, I mean, if you look on the front cover, the back of the Double Life of Danny Day, it's Brandon Mull. That's his cover quote.
It's right there.
And look, cover quotes are where the authors are strapped. And so
Yeah.
I just like, look, man, I know you don't have to do this. Like, please, if you don't have the time, turn it down. He's like, nah, I'll give you something.
Yeah.
I was like, dang, man. And again, part of it was because I took a risk and I went away from work, and then I just responded to opportunities. But start something. Well, yeah. Is the podcast was it the most amazing thing I've ever done? No, but it was I don't care if anyone doesn't even listen to it. It was an awesome way to meet other authors. That thing is panned out 10 times over.
Yeah. Well, and the great thing about either doing a podcast or just meeting people is I don't care how big they are or if they've, become a bestseller or whatever. Like, I just love talking to creative people and figuring out why they do what they do. And of course, if I could interview all these awesome, amazing authors that I read their books and I love their stuff, cool. Like, that's great opportunity. But if I can just talk to somebody and get their thoughts and figure out, hey, how do I write this type of dialogue for middle grade people? Or that's an example for you, but it's like just learning that from somebody who's doing it and has published books doing it is a huge bonus. It's so
and a lot of times too, if you reach out and talk to someone like, hey, can I just chat with you?
Yeah.
Some people will say yes, some people say no, but he's like, hey, can I interview your podcast? It's like, it formalizes it just enough to like kind of make it happen.
Exactly.
And so yeah.
You know all the tricks. You got
I do. Dude, I have not too long ago been in your exact same spot. So I do know all the tricks.
No, that was so cool. Well, actually, that goes to my question. How so obviously you listen to your kids and your kids' friends, but how do you write dialogue for those younger ages when as you're getting older and words stop making sense? And I mean, I'm like 28 and I've been experiencing that, and I'm like, I don't even know what these kids are saying anymore, which is funny to say, these kids, but it's true.
I know.
So like, how do you keep
it happens
up with
very
that?
fast.
Yeah, how do you keep up with that? What do you do and also to make sure that it doesn't feel outdated in like a year or two or even
So
6
this
months?
is the trick. The trick is to both stay up to date and to not, which is kind of weird.
Right.
So the times that I leaned in hard to slang, my editor calls me out, and I've let a couple of those go through, and I actually regret the ones that went through. Like, I think in Danny Day, I talk about Visco girls. Now, Visco is still a thing, but it's largely based on an app. Yeah. And I don't hear the term Visco girls very much, even though last week my daughter was still referencing Visco, but it's not. Once TikTok came around and stuff, it's not what it was. So it's latching on to, for instance, if I'm going to say something, I will ask my kids, do people still say this? And they will either go, yeah, of course they do. Or they'll be like, of course they don't. And if it's in a course they don't, then I strike it because then you sound way outdated. But if it's a course they do, then that's all the data point that I need. If I said it and my kid says it, then it's eternal enough. So,
gotcha.
Like, hey, that's awesome. Now that sounds like, well, everyone says awesome. It's like, but do they?
True.
You have to question at that level. So awesome, cool, dude. Like, hey, dude, people still say that. Hey, man, people still say that. Yeah. And so in my beta reader pool are teenagers. Nice. So including them in your beta reader pool to say, like, does this actually sound authentic? Now, does it sound exactly, am I going to say like skibbity toilet? No, I'm not going to put that into my book, right? I'm not going to say that's lit. I'm not going to say, there's a whole host of things that I wouldn't say, or I probably shouldn't say. It just dates your book. Yeah. And in 3 years, we're like, oh, well, apparently he wrote that in 2003. Right. And you don't want to do that. So yeah, I keep an ear to my kids and be like, oh, they're having the exact same kind of conversations that I'm having. Now, can you accomplish this without having kids at the ready? Sure. It makes it way easier. So The Talent Thief is a perfect example. It's my first book that I wrote from a girl's point of view. Right. And there are some people that say, oh, it's an automatic 1-star. How dare a white cis male write this? That's fine. That's gonna happen. Yep. I have had way more people say, holy crap, you nailed
Mhm.
a teenage girl's voice. I was like, well, of course. I had one in the house. So there's 5 years apart from my oldest to my youngest, my two daughters. So I had one that was kind of that age as I was writing it, and I had one that was coming into that age when it released.
Mm.
So I had like I was completely covered, like
Yeah.
as far as that voice goes. And a lot of it's like, oh, I just have to write like my daughter.
Mhm.
And but could you pull that off as a 28-year-old guy without a daughter in the house? You could. It'd be harder.
Yeah.
So you have to see like, well, why would I be doing that? If I didn't have two daughters, I never would have written that
Yeah.
book. So I always just said this was a risk.
Mhm.
In fact, my editor wanted me to change it to a boy.
Oh.
This was a risk, and I'm writing this book for my what was then 10-year-old daughter, now 12-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And I don't really care what people say. And oddly enough, this is the one that has the most accolades. It's the one that got the Kirkus Star. It's the one that got the Publisher's Weekly Star. It just got Sequoia Master List.
Wow.
It's a Whitney Award finalist. It's Association of Mormon Letters finalist. Like, it's got by far the most decorated. Oddly enough, it has the lowest Goodreads score. So somehow that doesn't make sense. But
I mean,
readers, whatever.
Readers, reviewers versus actual awards, the levels are a bit different. Like it's okay.
Goodreads is a different crowd too, man.
It's
like my Amazon reviews are all like high 4s, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9. Goodreads is brutal.
Yeah.
Goodreads are a rough crowd, man.
It's also because a lot of like middle grade readers are actually like adults and like older adults who just love that genre. Like me,
middle grade readers.
Yeah.
Or Goodreads authors, Goodreads readers are also the kind of people that don't like that a man wrote in a girl's voice.
Right. Yeah.
Amazon readers don't seem to care.
Well, and like I want to write stuff at that age because that's what really got me into reading, and that's what really gave me my love of fantasy. Like for me, my favorite series of all time is the Spiderwick Chronicles.
Oh yeah.
And I love them so much, and it's because I picked them up myself when I was in like second or third grade. And so like I want to do that. I want to give that to other people. So it's so cool that you want to write for your kids something that they would like to read or they would like to experience.
And it's weird too, man. Like my youngest now, I've never had a reader. My kids read, but I haven't had a reader until my 12-year-old. And really until like the last couple of months. She found Keeper of the Lost Cities and it was all over. I think she read like 1 million words in a month. It was bananas.
Dang.
And now she's writing, she's doing all that stuff. And a lot of it's because her friends got into it. And now there's love triangles. They're interested in that kind of thing. But what's weird is like, my target audience is grades 3 through 8.
Right.
In 2 years, I have a 6th grader as my youngest. She'll be coming out of 8th grade.
Yeah.
And then I'll still continue to write middle grade. So it's weird that like, that's how I started. That's just how my brain works. I like middle grade because I think we talked about this at LTW. You can tackle weightier subjects.
Yep.
You just have to do it in a way that's, I say family friendly, but it's not necessarily family friendly. It's just a way that anyone can digest it. They say the difference between comedy and horror is distance. So, watching a guy fall down a mountain from far away is funny.
Yeah.
Watching a guy fall down a mountain zoomed in and you're hearing the bones crack and seeing the blood is horrific. Yeah. And so just choosing your angle and your distance to cover certain topics. Like again, I'm covering suicide in my next book.
Yeah.
You can do that in the middle grade. You can do that in a way it's not like kids aren't exposed to this stuff. Yeah. And I would much rather do it in a way that's thoughtful and hopefully meaningful than just having them come across it in their normal life or their normal experience online. So I don't think I'm hamstrung by middle grade, but it is, you do have to, like if you read my characters, you'd be like, okay, Danny probably doesn't talk exactly like a 12-year-old. Well, Danny's lived every day twice. So is he really a 12-year-old? So there's no really way I can get that wrong. Because someone could say, well, that doesn't sound like a 12-year-old. I'm like, well, how else should a 12-year-old who's lived every day twice sound? Yeah. Should he sound super like intelligent, or should he still sound like his peers, or some weird mixture of the two? Probably some weird mixture of the two.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no right way to write that. Like there's no wrong way or right way.
Well, it's also it's magical realism. So who's really to say what's right and what's wrong?
I'm also of the opinion this was like the before he kind of fell off a cliff, the Joss Whedon style of dialogue. Right. I would rather listen to and read dialogue that's ultra witty, almost uncannily witty, than something that lacks wit. Right. Like you go listen to some of those conversations in the original Avengers, and everyone's got a quip, and it's like boom, 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 boom. It's like, you're probably not going to have everyone be that witty in a conversation, but it's super awesome to listen to.
Yeah. Well,
so
it's still fun. Well, even like Black Widow, who is this like assassin super
Yeah.
serious character. She has quips. Yeah, it's
Right.
like yeah, it's funny, but I mean
And so
that
maybe you
yeah,
try to squirrel those quips
mhm,
to a few characters or one
right,
character versus all the others. Um, but I'm always trying to make the conversation. I'll write a conversation, then I'll go back through and be like, all right, where's the joke
yeah,
here? Where's the wit here? I think a great way to write witty dialogue is to take, just look up cliched phrases, and there'll be a list of 100. Ask ChatGPT to give you the most. It'll tell you,
right, yeah.
and then subvert those phrases.
Okay,
So purposely trying to. So then you're latching on, so your reader will see the phrase, they know what's coming, and then boom, you subvert it, and they're like, oh, okay, that's kind of clever. And so it kind of those give you a starting point. It gives you an automatic starting point because you're gonna
okay,
have them.
wow,
Um,
yeah,
so that's an easy, low hanging fruit. And the way you subvert it is gonna be very different than how I subvert it.
mhm,
Um, and so that's an easy spot to start from if you want to do something clever. I'm also going over this from a scene perspective with my daughter. So I said, Sienna, and look, don't get just disappointed, Sienna, because I did this when I was starting out, when I was writing at like 27 or 26 and you're
yeah,
12.
yeah,
But like, you know, the first time you always write a scene, it's always like some guy looking in the mirror or some guy looking in his reflection. And I'm like, don't do that. It's like, guess who did it? I did.
yep,
And everyone else does it. So finding like what those, going to tvtropes.com
mhm,
disabuses you of any notion that you have any ounce of
right,
originality.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
and
finding what
yeah.
those tropes are and subverting them is I think a great part.
Well,
A
and
great
a lot of it,
part.
like like you're saying, like the tropes, they help the genre you're writing in. So
Yes.
like love triangles, like what you're saying with your daughter, that is so integral to those types of stories, whether it's
Yep.
romantasy or if it is middle grade stuff, high school stuff, that is actually integral to the genre. You just got to make it play with your own voice and your own
I
way of
agree.
speaking. So it's like so many people are worried about being original, and it's like don't worry about being original. Just write your story with your voice, and hey, lean on those a little bit because they'll actually help you form a good story because you might hit either the market or the reader at a specific time and it'll work out.
Yeah, I would say tropes provide structure,
Yeah.
cliches provide opportunities
Mm,
to subvert.
there you go.
Like
Smart.
tropes are I'm all about tropes. There's
Yeah.
a reason why there's the, Harry Potter, Frodo, and Luke Skywalker were all, orphans living with their aunt and
Right.
uncle with no particular ability.
Yeah.
Not that you have to do that,
Hmm.
but understand what those tropes are, what this kind of that structure for that kind of story is, and then play around with the cliches within that.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
Aragon. I read through the first one again and I was like, yeah, it's very much a classic hero's journey. Yeah, there's a
yeah,
lot of similarities to Star Wars, but he does it so well, especially for a teen author. Like
yeah,
you don't even have to know he's a teen author to see that it's well written and that the world
right.
building is really well done. And yeah, I mean, of course, it has all of its own problems and stuff, but it does a great job at what it's trying to do. So
Yep. And I'm a huge fan of things that do a great job of what they're trying to do. I think
yeah.
one of your questions that you sent me was like, what media,
Hmm.
have I found influential or
Right.
or have I liked in the last year or so?
Yeah.
And I am a huge fan of things that just do well what they are trying to do. So like
Mhm.
the John Wicks of the world. People, oh well, John Wick delivers you exactly what John Wick's supposed to
Yep.
deliver you, and it does it very, very well.
Yep.
Great. I know exactly what I'm going to get out of that. Um, the last year, I felt like, especially in movies, I used to go, especially in the heydays of the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
Mhm.
basically up to Endgame. Um,
Yep.
I felt like a lot of those movies, I was the core audience. Those
Right.
movies were for me.
Same.
I do not feel like a lot of media today. I have to be much more
Mhm.
selective to find something that I feel like I am the audience for.
Right.
This is not to say that everyone needs to stop what they're doing and change what they're doing. If those things are finding an audience, I'm happy.
Hmm.
But I'm just not that audience. It doesn't seem like it anymore. So
Yeah.
I love Dungeons and Dragons. I thought that was something that I'm
It was a good movie.
shocked that it didn't do better at the box office.
Yeah.
But I thought it executed what it was trying to do brilliantly.
Yep.
Brilliantly. The heart, the humor, and the act, it had like all of it. I want all of those.
Yeah.
I want a full emotional roller coaster. That did all of them very well. The fan service to Dungeons and Dragons was incredible, but also invisible to those that didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Like it hit that perfect, man. It walked that line perfectly. So that one I thought was a great example of that's the kind of content I want to produce.
Yeah.
So what do you want to produce? I would just say the original Guardians of the Galaxy. That's what I'm trying to hit. You know, is it's action, it's way witty, it's funny, and it's not like something like you wouldn't call Infinity War funny.
Yeah.
There could be funny lines in there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think Infinity War is one of the greatest movies ever, but I want something that you would say, oh, you can describe Dungeons and Dragons as, man, that was awesome action, or you would describe it like that actually had it was surprisingly profound.
Yeah,
had a lot of heart, or you would describe it as funny. Like you could describe it as all three.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a review I got for Danny where someone said that it was surprisingly profound, and that was one of the best compliments I've ever received. Because you're not looking for something to be profound in that. In fact, I wasn't looking for something to be profound in it when I started it. And I kept doing drafts, and I was like, all right, not what could a boy do with living every day twice, which I explore thoroughly in that book, but what would it do to him? And I didn't ask that question until like draft 2 or 3. How would it affect his ability to connect with other people? How did it affect his ability? Would it make him a sociopath? Because he could get away with whatever he wanted that first day.
Yeah.
Knowing that, it'll reset. But you still are doing that.
Yeah.
Like, it might not last. It might disappear into the ether, but you're still doing it. So, like, now I didn't go super deep on that, but I went deep enough. And anyway, those are the things I like doing when I iterate. So I think, that was awesome. Dungeons and Dragons. So X-Men, the original X-Men cartoon was like, that's what started this whole thing for me.
Yeah.
So X-Men 97 just came out.
Yep.
And I'm still in a holding pattern. I liked it. The last episode with Goblin Queen was a little weird. But I thought they did a good job so far. Disney has been firing blanks for me recently. So my expectations were severely tempered.
Not just you. It's most people have felt that way. So.
And dude, I could talk your ear off for hours into why I think that is.
Yeah.
One of them is a concept that I'm now like trademarking this phrase. It's going to be built in a lot of what I do.
There you go.
And it's about the hero's journey, which is what stands in your way is not what holds you back. And I think a lot of the stories that Disney has told forgets this. They think what stands in your way needs to be removed, or what stands in your way, can be dismissed, or, but some part of you needs to change on the hero's journey. And if at the end of the hero's journey, your revelation is, oh, it was in me all along. I was perfect all along. It's a dumb hero's journey. I want to see that you have to change. Yeah. I want to see you come up against an antagonist and realize I need to level up my character before I can take this thing down. Yeah. And anyone that plays an ounce of video games knows this. When you encounter an enemy and you get dominated, you go level up and then you return. You don't just wish that it goes away. Like, it's so intuitive to gamers. And then we see it in stories and we're like, why did that bug me? Why was that not satisfying? Because the person didn't change. They didn't level up. They didn't go on an arc. They just realized in the end, oh, it was fine all along.
Yeah.
Or the antagonist is actually kind of a good guy, like Wonder Woman 84 or any, I can go on and on and on and on about examples of this where the bad guy in the end was just kind of misunderstood. No, what? What are we talking about here? I don't know. People in their efforts to subvert stuff, I think sometimes go astray, but so X-Men, I'm in a holding pattern right now.
Okay.
Hasn't transgressed. I would say Invincible has replaced that spot in my heart. Now that one comes with a content warning for sure.
Yes.
But I like Invincible quite a bit. Now, the character Invincible kind of ends up being too much of a punching bag for me. Kind of waiting for him to level up a little bit, but I do like what they done there. Yeah. I did see also what comes with a heavy content warning is Blue-Eyed Samurai.
I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard amazing things about it.
It is, storytelling is top notch. It is a beautifully rendered cartoon.
Right.
Music's on point, voice acting's on point, characters are on point. Huge content warning. It is very adult. I didn't know that going into it. I was like, whoa, holy cow. Yeah. Here we go. But it hooked me in enough. So that was cool. And that was kind of like Arcane for me.
Right. Yeah.
as far as its level of beauty and
Mhm.
cinematography for a cartoon. I thought the first 3 episodes of Arcane's old now, but old. It's several years old.
Yeah.
The first 3 episodes of Arcane for me were like masterclass.
Yes.
And then once it does the time jump, I went from like 11 out of 10 to like an 8 out of 10
Mm.
for me. But man, those first 3 episodes,
Yeah.
baby.
Literally the gut punch at the in that third
Yes.
episode. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and the music and just everything was just chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Spot on.
It's fantastic. I'm excited for season 2.
Yeah, so good. So there are some things out there still that I feel like,
Yeah.
but like man, I used to at the end of a year, I'd have 5 or 6 movies and I'm like, oh, these spoke right to me. I'm at
Right.
like 1 or 2.
Mhm.
It's just, like Top Gun Maverick was a great example of one. And I'm like,
Right.
dude, this does everything right that everything else does wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to, whether it's Willow or Han Solo or Indiana Jones, I don't want to know that the hero that I haven't seen for 20 years has been a bumbling mess the last 20 years. Like
Yeah.
when we last saw them, they'd leveled up, they were beloved. I want to still see. I want to see them still doing those things,
Mhm.
and then I come back and they're like pathetic and washed up. And Luke Skywalker's the same way. Like what? And they do that because they need to put them down in order to raise the
Right.
next generation up, which they don't.
Yeah.
And then you get Top Gun Maverick, which is a perfect example. What's Top Gun been up to? What's Maverick been up to? They're freaking kicking butt.
Yeah.
Now, he still has ways in which he needs to level up. He still has ways in which he purposely stunted his growth. But we get to see him teaching the young guys a thing or two. And that's why the movie made $1.1 billion out of nowhere. Because people want to see that.
Yeah.
It is astounding to me that people don't reward their audience. So that's another thing I try to do. I try to reward you. When you're at the end, I want you to have gone on I'm a very wish fulfilling kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be a wish fulfilling journey.
Yeah.
That's surprisingly profound. It makes you laugh and hopefully makes you cry even, makes you cheer. This triumphant, like reward your audience. I just don't want to be, if I want to be lectured, I'll watch a documentary.
Yeah.
I don't want to be lectured by, I want to be excited. I want to be taken on this emotional journey. I just feel like so much of today is just trying to lecture you.
Yeah.
There's room, I guess, for that in my life, but I don't want to get it from Blue Eye Samurai. Like, I don't want to watch that to be entertained.
Exactly.
I don't know, man. That's where I just feel like I want to be part of the resistance in a way, as far as providing content that rewards its audience and its readers in a way that I feel like we're lacking these days.
Well, I mean, and that's one reason why I love so many middle grade and just younger stories for younger audiences, is because so many of them feel like they have like everlasting themes and morals and things
Yes.
that will always make sense.
Yep.
Something
I am
that
all about those.
something that will always stick with people. Bravery.
I would much rather write about friendship
Yeah.
and, courage,
Right.
sacrifice, death, than pick the side. I mean, of a political spectrum, than something that is so obviously, if I see the author's hand in it, I'm out, dude.
Yeah.
It just pulls me out of the story, whether it agrees with my political persuasion or not.
Yeah.
Or moral persuasion or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't like seeing it so heavy-handed. And why would you alienate half your audience like that on purpose?
True.
So, like, I have a character in Techno Wizard,
Mm-hmm.
and she's this little tree girl, kind of fairy girl, and she kind of has a Pinocchio complex a little bit. And she can change her body, and she can grow and whatever. And so she, over time, kind of changed herself to be more human, and she has to sacrifice some of herself. And so there's this kind of moral back and forth. But, like, so you think, like, okay, who can identify with her? Well, anyone who doesn't feel comfortable in their body. Well, who can that be? Anybody.
Yeah.
Talk to any 12-year-old girl and see if she's comfortable in her body, or there's things about her body she doesn't like. Anyone. But anyone on the far left, on the far right, could read into that. But if I went really hard and really obvious and really heavy-handed with what message I wanted to get across there, I would alienate half my audience.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? I just don't. I'm trying to reach everybody. I'm trying to reach that commonality. And so there's a market for it, to really, really zero in on your niche and alienating people. And people are fine doing that. That's not me.
Yeah. Oh, that is really great. And I think that's a good thing to focus on, to want to include as many people as possible. Yeah. I think that's one thing.
Because that
A
story
lot of
can
people
bring you
forget.
together.
Yeah.
I would love to hear that two kids from very, very different upbringings and backgrounds and families' political persuasions both like my book,
Right.
rather than a lot of one, you know, if I had to choose.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Why, like Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, he died a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and everyone was coming just talking
Pretty wild to
about
see that response.
it. It was insane. Like pretty much all my timelines, not on Facebook, but on Instagram, Twitter, and everything was all just rest in peace, Toriyama, and just
Yeah.
everyone was talking about. And that's because like people like him make stories that everyone can connect to. Overcoming the
Right.
bad guy, bravery, friendship, yeah, sacrifice, all
Yep.
these things.
All those eternal themes, man.
And and it's so great. So yeah,
Yep.
it's
And we're lacking for those
yeah,
stories.
it's a good, really good stance to have. But yeah, but I just wanted to thank you, Mike, for coming on today.
Yeah.
Your insights are so cool. I love your inspiration when it comes to networking and going to schools and inspiring people. And yeah, I think it's something that a lot of authors don't do. But if more authors did it, whether you're traditionally hybrid or indie published, it would make things way better for everybody. It would inspire more people to not even just write, but just like more stories and get into reading. So I think
Yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I love being on the grind, man.
Yep.
It is, you don't like doing it if you're not passionate about it, then
Yeah.
again, even the things you're passionate about get hard eventually. So,
True.
I just don't know. It's one of those things that's like, even if I don't make money doing it, even if I don't get notoriety, I still would be doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and finding out what those things are for you, I think is important, and they might change as you get older. But this is one that I just love doing. So, yeah, we'll kind of always be doing it.
Well, you inspired me. I'm excited. I'm gonna publish something and then I'll go do that. But I'm
Sweet.
really excited to do it
Yeah.
because I'm gonna take your advice there. So
Good deal.
awesome. Well, thank you so much everybody for watching. Check out all of Mike's stuff. It'll be linked in the description below. His books are great. I mean, I'm only reading this one, but from the descriptions and everything, it's very cool. I think you'll enjoy it. But yeah, Mike, any final thoughts you want to say before we head off here?
Yeah, not really. I think it's been a great conversation, and yeah, stay in touch, man.
Okay.
You know how easy I am to get hold of. So yeah.
You are very easy. Yeah, guys, if you want to talk to him, I mean,
Yeah, hit me up.
He's very kind, very easy to talk to. So yeah,
Cool, man.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.